Hello everyone and welcome to a new video dedicated to our beloved Snoopy and the world of Peanuts. In Peanuts, food is never just food. It is a medium for telling relationships, expressing emotions, and creating comic or reflective situations. From school lunches to picnics with friends to Charlie Brown's lonely dinners, food often becomes a narrative element that adds depth to the characters. This December 1st, 1950 strip is a perfect example of how Schulz used seemingly ordinary moments to build meaningful interactions. It features Patty, one of the series' first female protagonists, and Charlie Brown, still in his early stages before he became the universal symbol of insecurity and melancholy. The context is simple. Patty has prepared sandwiches and offers them to Charlie Brown. He, with his usual cautious and thoughtful attitude, first asks for confirmation about the origin of the food and then, after a brief taste, compliments her. But, as we will see by analyzing each vignette, much more is hidden behind this scene. The strip published on December 1st, 1950 shows a social moment between Patty and Charlie Brown, two of the main characters at that time. Interestingly, at this stage, Schulz was still experimenting with the character of his main characters. Patty, for example, is a strong and confident figure, very different from female characters that would come later, such as Lucy or Sally. In these early strips, she often takes on the role of a welcoming friend, almost a little landlady who takes care of others. Charlie Brown, on the other hand, is not yet fully defined as we know him today. He already has a certain insecurity and a tendency to think too much before speaking, but he is less pessimistic and more spontaneous than later versions. The scene is probably set in Patty's house or in an informal place, such as a kitchen or a dining area. The detail of the two cups on the table suggests that the two are sharing a moment of respite, perhaps a snack or a light lunch. Now, let's analyze the strip vignette by vignette. In the first vignette, Patty turns to Charlie Brown with a friendly expression and hands him a sandwich, saying, "Here, Charlie Brown, have a sandwich." The scene is set up very simply. The two are sitting across from each other with a table in between. Schulz, as always, has avoided superfluous details in the background, focusing only on the essential elements. Patty's gesture is gentle and spontaneous. There is no forcing in her invitation. It is a sincere offer, typical of a hospitable person. This detail is important because it shows us a side of her character that will be somewhat sidelined in later strips until Patty's character is gradually replaced by more iconic ones. Charlie Brown, for his part, accepts the sandwich, but his expression is neutral. He does not express immediate enthusiasm, but neither does he express rejection. He only hints at a slight smile. As always, he is a character who observes and reflects before reacting. In the second vignette, Charlie Brown takes the sandwich, but instead of eating it right away, he asks an unexpected question. "Did you make these sandwiches yourself?" This simple sentence is very significant. First of all, it shows a key characteristic of the character, his tendency to overthink before acting. Instead of accepting the gesture lightly, he feels the need to ask for confirmation. Perhaps because he wants to know who prepared it, or perhaps because he has some reservations about the quality of the food. It is a small detail, but a very realistic one. Who among us has never asked who cooked something before tasting it? The way the question is asked is also interesting. Charlie Brown does not ask, "Who made these sandwiches?" but uses a more direct construction, already implying that he has some suspicion. It is a perfect example of Schulz's style. Few strokes, little dialogue, but loaded with meaning. In the third vignette, Patty responds with confidence, "Sure." Meanwhile, Charlie Brown tastes the sandwich. His comment is brief, almost restrained. "They're fine." Here the pause between "are" and "good" is crucial. It is a typical narrative device that Schulz uses to create a slight comic effect. The reader might expect immediate judgment, but Charlie Brown hesitates. This leaves room for different interpretations. Is he trying to be nice? Is he unsure of what he has just tasted? Is he simply taking the time to process a judgment? This is a classic Charlie Brown reaction. He never overdoes his expressions and often appears indecisive or diplomatic. Word choice is important because instead of giving a direct compliment, his tone seems more cautious. In the fourth vignette, Charlie Brown, after a brief pause, pays a sincere compliment to Patty, saying, "You are a good cook." This change in tone is significant because it shows how the character, even with his insecurity, still wants to acknowledge his friend's efforts. It is a closure that reflects the Peanuts' typical humor, based on small gestures and realistic interactions. An interesting detail is that this vignette follows a rhythm typical of Schulz's strips, where the punchline lightly reverses what has been built up in the previous vignettes. The contrast between Charlie Brown's apparent hesitation and his sudden declaration of appreciation creates a subtle but effective comic effect. Trivia, anecdotes, and insights. Food has always been a recurring element in the Peanuts, and it is often used as a means of creating interactions between characters. Lucy, for example, is often shown eating something, while Linus has a famous scene in which he explains to Charlie Brown that a peanut butter and jelly sandwich may seem insignificant, but, in its simplicity, is perfect. Schulz had a unique ability to turn everyday moments into meaningful situations, and this strip is a perfect example. Patty, in this early period of Peanuts, had a more prominent role and often interacted with Charlie Brown directly. As time went on, however, her character would gradually be pushed into the background to make way for more iconic figures such as Lucy, Linus, and Snoopy. However, in these early strips, Patty is a constant presence and represents a confident type of child who often takes the lead in conversations. Another interesting aspect is the way Charlie Brown reacts to food. In many future strips, he will be shown confronting uninviting school meals or his difficulty in cooking something edible. In this scene, his hesitation in judging the sandwich prepared by Patty could be seen as an anticipation of this characteristic of his. Moreover, the interaction between Patty and Charlie Brown reflects a very common type of relationship between children. One of them assumes a role of security and leadership, while the other is more uncertain and reflective. Schulz had an extraordinary talent for capturing these dynamics and depicting them with a few essential lines and minimal dialogue. This strip is a perfect example of this, showing how, through a simple conversation over a sandwich, a scene can be constructed that tells much more than it seems at first glance.
If you enjoyed yourself, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the little bell to stay updated, and see you next, friends.